Welcome to week 4. This week we're going to be learning about substance use disorders and addiction. I have the week 4 learning resources pulled up here. For the first part of your learning this week, I want you to be doing your own internet research. You can use these links here for the National Institute on Drug Abuse or the SAMHSA website. I did notice that the first link it says page not found when you click on it, but you can do your own Google of National Institute on Drug Abuse and probably get to a more recent web page. I'm specifically looking for you to look at data from your own geographic location, so you could also go to state and county health departments and Drug and Alcohol Administration websites, or even local agencies. Many local agencies will have a section on their website about specific data related to addiction in your area. You can look at anything from utilization of services to ER admissions. You can look at utilization of harm reduction strategies, medication-assisted treatment, just any kind of statistics related to substance use disorders. And then you're going to be reading all of these articles here. There's just 2 of them. This is looking at just the concept of addiction and the disease concept specifically, and the relation of PTSD and substance use. Many people with substance use disorders do also have a history of trauma, whether they meet the criteria for PTSD or not. And it looks like this article is looking at clinical guidelines for implementing seeking safety therapy specifically. You will find that unfortunately a lot of people begin using substances as a way to mask their emotions related to their trauma, and then it quickly becomes that disease of addiction. You are then going to choose one article from each group in group 1, 2, and 3. You'll see that group 1 relates to attachment and substance use disorders. Group 2 is related to sexual addiction and compulsivity. And group 3 is related to co-occurring disorders and harm reduction. So you will see some different viewpoints related to substance use disorders and addiction. As usual, when you're choosing an article, maybe choose something that you want to learn more about. Then moving down to the videos, I want you to view both of these videos. The first video is related to substance abuse in older adults. Substance use is a problem throughout the lifespan typically. For people, when you have an addiction, a lot of times that addiction is carried throughout life, and it's about managing the addiction and recovering from the addiction. Unfortunately, there are many people who are older adults who are still struggling with addiction, and that looks at that population specifically. And then the second video is related to treatment, looking at narrative therapy for addiction treatment. We looked at narrative therapy a lot last week, so this can just be another perspective of this modality, specifically in working with people with addiction. So we have one discussion this week, and for this discussion you are going to be working in dyads or triads, which you can view in the people section on Canvas, or the dyads and triads are posted in the announcement for this week. So this week, for your initial post, you're going to be describing client's demographic data and experiences, essentially a full case scenario of somebody who is dealing with addiction. This can be related to, we've looked at a couple of different things. This could be related to gambling addiction, sexual addiction, or substance use disorders. So I want you to briefly describe kind of some background information, identify specifically what the addiction is that the client is experiencing, and how it's impacting their functioning, and any problems that might have resulted from their addiction. or influencing their addiction. So you can go into the trauma history, which might be influencing the addiction. You can go into how problems resulting from the addiction have created trauma, and or relationship issues or health problems. There are a variety of factors that could be influencing or influenced by addiction. Some of you might be in a triad. If you are, make sure that you can coordinate between the three of you and who will respond to who. Hopefully you can have one response for each person. So essentially, if you're in a triad, everybody is going to be posting that initial post of the case scenario, but then you'll just have to coordinate to see who is going to respond to who in order to make sure that each person has a response. And then your response posts are due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And you're just going to provide thoughts about understanding the client's addiction, issues related to countertransference that you might experience. This is a population that oftentimes countertransference can be experienced. It can be very difficult in working with somebody with addiction because that addiction is so ingrained into their lifestyle. And, for instance, I'm going to just use alcohol as an example. Somebody with an alcohol use disorder, their world, becomes alcohol. It's what they do to enjoy themselves. It's what they do to calm down. It's what they do to cope with things. So oftentimes there can be a lot of resistance and anger when they're trying to get sober. And, sometimes that can be difficult for somebody who hasn't experienced a substance use disorder to understand, and can create some countertransference. Whether you've experienced it or not, a lot of emotions start to come into play when somebody is in recovery and newly in recovery, because essentially those emotions have been masked by the addiction and are really, the floodgates are let down once they enter into recovery. So that's where it can be difficult, and keep that in mind when you're talking about countertransference, because those are things that are reality. And while many of us would like to say, we would continue to, take a step back and look at it from, the perspective of addiction and have some understanding of that client, there are a variety of times that countertransference can come into play. If you do use any materials from texts or articles, make sure that you are providing citations as well. I also wanted to go over the integrative paper part 1, which is due this week, week 4. The purpose of this paper is to describe and discuss your own approaches to clinical social work practice. Now that we've reviewed a variety of different theories, from psychodynamic theory to narrative theory to cognitive behavioral theory, I would like you to choose 1 or 2 theories that you think you could see yourself practicing within your clinical social work practice. And, preferably something that you really believe in, that makes a lot of sense to you. And we're going to really delve into those theories in this paper. Other models from your foundation practice classes are not acceptable for this assignment. I want you to be looking specifically at theories that we learned in Social Work 630 or Social Work 639. So you're going to be rating 4 to 6 page paper, and I have the outline here. So part 1 is really looking at the overview of your theory. So you're going to identify the theory and how you would perform assessment within that theory. So what are some key characteristics or core concepts of that theory that would be used for assessment? So when we think of assessment, we're looking at what are some things that I could use from this theory that would help explain the why. Why is this happening for my client? Or why is my client experiencing these symptoms? So, and then you're going to be, again, looking at the major concepts and using that within your assessment. So we're not taking a particular client case with this paper, but we're describing the theory in itself. And then you're going to look at how does the chosen theory define the goals and plans for intervention. So what does that theory say the goal is? So for instance, for narrative theory, it would be reauthoring and externalizing problems. For cognitive behavioral therapy, it would be reworking core beliefs and negative assumptions and thought patterns. So then you're going to be describing the role of the worker within the theory for practice. So this is the use of self in therapy. So just to give another example, within cognitive behavioral therapy, the role of the therapist is the guide to reworking their thought patterns and behaviors. Whereas with psychodynamic theory, or maybe more attachment-related theory, the role of the worker would be to use themselves to model interactions. For instance, it might be using validation to encourage a more secure attachment. So those are just some examples of the role of the worker and how that might shift theory to theory. Then you're going to be looking at what are the social work values contained in the Code of Ethics, which are consistent with the theory. So here you definitely be citing the NASW Code of Ethics and pulling out some particulars from the Code of Ethics that would fit with this theory, or how this theory would fit into our Code of Ethics. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at how the theories address any forms of oppression with your clients that they've experienced within their lives. How can this theory be used with a variety of different cultures, and how might they address some issues that might arise related to oppression, whether it be related to class, race, ethnicity, gender. And then in the second section, we're looking at strengths and limitations. So here you might identify which clients, problems, and situations do you think this theory would work best with. So, we know that every theory isn't a one-size-fits-all, so it's not going to work effectively with every single client that you have necessarily, or you might need to adapt it to suit the needs of each particular client. And then you're going to be identifying which client is it not suitable with. So this can be related to, you can identify a particular diagnosis that the theory might be most effective with. You can identify a specific population that it is or is not going to be effective with. And then lastly, you're going to be looking at cross-cultural considerations. Again, how might you modify this theory to work with people of different gender, race, ethnicity, class, age, mental and physical capacity, religion, or sexual orientation? Every theory, might be used slightly differently with people depending on who they are. And it is very important for us to meet our clients where they're at and to consider some different ways that they might benefit most from each theory. You are required to include at least 5 outside scholarly sources for this paper. Please do keep that in mind and make sure that you have APA format. And make sure that you review the APA format. You can look at it in the MSW Student Resources section. There is some information regarding formatting papers in that area of Canvas. So that is all I have for you this week. As usual, reach out with any questions, and I hope you have a good week.